It's hard to believe that Final Fantasy came out in 1997. It has been decades that it has been out, and it still continues to bring joy around the world to this day. It has been considered to be one of the most successful Final Fantasies for Square Enix. So what exactly made the whole franchise so popular and continued to do so decades later? Well, what made the franchise so interesting goes back to Final Fantasy VII OG. This game showed what PlayStation could really do. Square Enix was starting to use 3D modeling, and Nintendo game cartridges were just not cutting it. So, Square and Sony made a partnership, and they made 7 OG in 3 separate discs. At the time, in 1997, that was groundbreaking, and the fact that the game was that long was baffling. Now we just scoff since modern day things are bigger, better, faster, and stronger. Another reason was that it was one of the first RPGs to make the audience actually care for that genre. It wasn't the first RPG game ever. Oh no. But it was the story, the characters, the side quests, and many other functions of the game that made it stand out. In fact, original Final Fantasy VII had many different games and movie to go with it. Crisis Core in 2007 followed the character Zack and why Sephiroth turned to villainy. Dirge of Cerberus in 2006, following Vincent and how he became Chaos. The movie Advent Children in 2005, following older Cloud, who has to fight an even worse Sephiroth, who essentially became God. And finally Remake in 2020, which shows what's best of the original, but with a twist, something new. Also, one of the most memorable things that fans will never ever forget is Final Fantasy VII's soundtrack. Nobuo Uematsu is notorious for his soundtracks. He had his orchestra make many soundtracks that was heartwarming, thrilling, or terrifying. Some of the most iconic is One Winged Angel, Aerith's theme, and the prelude. Those will forever be considered one of the top best Final Fantasy VII soundtracks. As what was briefly mentioned about how it wasn't the first RPG ever, however, it was probably one of the first that would make the player emotional. Nowadays, Aerith's death is iconic to anyone who knows Final Fantasy. But back then, it was so unexpected and shocking that you couldn't help but grieve over a character that you knew, played, and got the backstory on. Hence why Final Fantasy VII was considered the first RPG to make their audience have an emotion associated with it. Now, we take it to modern day 2021. What caused the Final Fantasy gurus to create such a masterpiece? Well, partly it was all the Final Fantasy VII fans demanding a remade version of OG. However, it was also the heads themselves, Yoshinori Kitase, Naoki Hamaguchi, and Shinji Hashimoto, who wanted to breathe life into the game again to make it memorable for many more decades to come. The fans, and I included, had thought that this was going to be exactly like OG. Boy, were we wrong. It had many new plot twists, and to be completely honest, I am certainly anticipating Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2.